After nearly 15 years of mainline absence, Transformers Animated makes a grand return in Legacy. The Cyber Ninja Prowl has just arrived through the space bridge, but has this new Legacy figure done him justice? Or will this be a repeat of the clumsy handling of the Prime Universe characters? Welcome back to the show, it's Gay for May. Prowl is not only one of the best characters in Animated, he's one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. A ninja disciple of the late Yokai-Tron, Prowl is a loner at heart, preferring to spend his time immersed in the wonders of the natural world, but as the series unfolds, Prowl proves to be both a reliable friend and a selfless hero. Being the first animated character inducted into Legacy is a well-deserved honor, and on the third day he rose again to save Optimus Prime from destruction. So I've always been really keen on seeing how they would tackle a modern Prowl figure. Now, there's really no other way to put this. Prowl's robot mode is exactly what I was expecting it to be, which is to say that he's met my expectations for what a G1 interpretation of the character should look like, and has been satisfyingly modernized in regards to his engineering. He's been thickened up with a bit of that classic 80s mass, neutering the character's ranginess in order to unify his design with the vaguely G1 aesthetics of modern generations, but it hasn't left him completely unrecognizable, since they've also gone out of their way to retain his most distinctive features. I think this is best shown by one rather small detail that goes a long way to sell the look of Prowl. Animated is known for having a very recognizable visual style, which was wonderfully crafted by the series' art director, Derek Wyatt. And one notable feature of many of the show's characters are their very exaggerated facial structures. Honestly, Animated was an entire series full of Giga Chads. For real, on God.
Because I'm just that good.
They've attempted to recreate this with Legacy Prowl. His head, while quite blocky and G1ified, has a noticeably longer chin than most other characters, emulating the original Prowl's rather impressive length. Again, it's subtle, but it makes me believe that the designers get what's iconic and important about the character. Leaving this out would be like taking away Bulkhead's rotundness, or the arrangement of Knockout's car kibble, or RC's slim athletic figure. Oh my god, that's exactly what they did, isn't it? So even in a show that's known for its memorable art style, Prowl is easily one of the more stylized designs, making him a rather bold choice to be the frontrunner of Legacy's foray into animated characters. Prowl could have looked a lot worse, especially since the Prime Universe characters were treated with the same reverence that a child would have for her father's handgun, which is to say, none at all, and the results are almost always tragic. But he isn't 100% faithful either. They've added some new detailing like these stripes on his shoulders and arms, as well as a smattering of extra surface greebling in some spots, just to put a little bit of speech on that design. There's two changes that I actively dislike though. My first gripe is with the glasses. In the show, Prowl's shades are markedly sharp and angular. They've been toned down a bit on this figure. While I can understand why they would square them off, as it's more in line with the G1 depiction of visored characters, it was a really cool facial detail that I would have personally liked to have kept. His legs are asymmetrical now too, which is kind of interesting, but they've also changed the color of his wheels from gray to black, which takes away from the uniqueness of his atypical leg structure a bit. At least they've tried their best to retain other important things from the original figure, like the gimmicks. The caps on Prowl's wheels detach and unfold into a shuriken, just like on the original toy. Your mileage may vary on how well it works though. He comes with two, but only one of his hands is actually designed to hold them, the other having a standard 5mm hole, which I think is a decent compromise so Prowl doesn't get locked into just his accessories. I do think it's a shame that they didn't give him a wrist swivel though, especially because the rest of his articulation has been vastly improved over the original. Since his hands flip out now, he ends up having an open gap left over in his forearm. Thankfully, the only other noticeable gaps on the figure are the ones in his hips. I'm sure they needed to cut corners on him somewhere in order to budget for the mechanism in his weapons, but I kind of feel like it's unfair when you realize that Prime RC not only got to have a wrist swivel, but also stole the way Prowl's arms originally transformed, so she doesn't have any gaps there at all. Honestly, it's because of that little trick that RC lifted from Prowl that I was almost convinced that he was going to be a retool of her mold. I am very glad to say that he's not. RC might be the most accurate to her series in terms of her superficial appearance, but I think they've done an overall finer job at translating Prowl to the G1 aesthetic, and having his own mold is definitely a part of that. So he looks pretty great, at least in terms of his robot mode. Transforming Prowl is pretty straightforward, particularly if you're familiar with the movements of the original toy, but very few things deliberately connect together, and after you make all those connections, you still end up having to mush the bike into shape the rest of the way. It feels really crudely designed, but it does hold together when you're all done, so it's really the least of the vehicle mode's problems. Prowl's vehicle mode, at a glance, is an acceptable attempt at modernizing the sleek jet black motorcycle. It's got all the right details. The angular front end with the sharp headlights and wide windscreen, the large vented panels running along the side of the body, and the classic red and blue siren lights. But on closer inspection, the bike mode is a bit of a visual mess. The first problem is the most obvious. There's all these extra colors now. While there were clear visual differences between the appearance of the bike on the show versus the toy, one thing they both depicted was the uniform black color scheme, broken up with a few choice placements of gold or gray. Prowl just has all this extra gold and beige coming from his exposed shoulders and hip joints that severely detract from the vehicle's cohesiveness. I don't know exactly how they could have fixed this, since it's mainly a consequence of the updated design of the figure, and in that regard, it might have been unavoidable. It just accentuates the messy and gappy bundle of robot parts that are tucked under the rear end of the vehicle. But I think I might have forgiven it if it weren't for this other enormous hole that goes straight through the main body of the bike. I haven't seen a hole this big since I visited your mother last night and had a carnal relationship with her. She has a very big hole, you see. I didn't have a good time. I think a simple way to fix it could have been to widen the piece that the handlebar attaches to, since it sits directly underneath that gap. Just a small bit of plastic to fill in that hole would have made this bike mode a lot better looking in my eyes. All of these issues in tandem completely destroy any belief that this could be a real motorcycle, but it seems like it ends up facilitating the appearance of the robot mode, which I guess I'm willing to accept begrudgingly in this case. It's an interesting inversion of the problems we saw with the Prime Universe characters. As I've mentioned, they each had big problems with their robot mode designs, mostly failing to represent the characters accurately, but they all had really strong, if not stylish, vehicle modes. But none of these issues compare to the most annoying problem with Prowl's vehicle mode, the kickstand. First of all, you can't get it out while he's fully transformed, and second, it seems a bit too short. So while if you're really delicate in how you put him down, he will stand on it, most of the time he will just flop onto his side. So if you want him to stand on his vehicle mode, just prop him up with any extra blasters you have lying around. You know, say what you will about RC, but at least her kickstand works. And honestly, her motorcycle mode is absolutely killer and completely blows Prowls out of the water. Yeah, I want Prime RC to blow me to completion too. Really stretching with these jokes today. So I have some mixed feelings about Prowl. It would be so easy for me to tell you to go buy one right now, so Hasbro knows we want more animated figures. And I think you should. They've certainly done this one well enough for me to happily play with and display him for years to come. He's very stylish, and he's a lot of fun in robot mode. But the vehicle mode has its slew of problems, and I think if they just spent a little more time ironing out the obvious flaws, the vehicle mode wouldn't have been perfect, but it would have looked a lot nicer. I'm still excited to see more though, because I know animated has a lot of potential for great new figures. And if you want to see my new figures, head on over to the Too Gay for May channel. I'll be posting all my unboxings and talking about anime figures on there from now on, and I've already uploaded a handful of new videos, so please check them out and make sure you subscribe. But anyway, that's just my opinions. Please leave yours in the comments below. Bye-bye.
Wait, what is this? What are you doing?
You're going to hell, bitch.
Oh, that doesn't sound that bad.
Hell.
Michigan.
Ah!